Just wanted to say miigwech for doing what you're doing for our school, teaching us all you know.
Thank you very much.
Miigwech.
I'm glad you asked. Should I just start now?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to say how happy I am to be here. That's my goal in my life, to talk about my experiences in the residential schools. I went to 2 of them, and that's my goal in life, to inform the children of today, because you are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. How exciting is that? One of you could be chief or counselors or work for your community, so you will be the leaders. And that's why it's important that you learn about the history of our people and what they went through and the struggles that they went through, so that will make you stronger, more knowledgeable, and you'll be able to face the world and Canada and everyone else with the truth about what took place in this country and the struggles that our people have gone through to overcome that and to become very, very confident leaders of tomorrow. I wish that for every one of you. Ani, Buju, Wachie. The Wachie part is my Cree greeting to you, as I'm a Cree person. And Ashke Badaban Deshqueo and Disnakaz. My name is New Dawn Woman. Of course, when I got that, it wasn't a very nice dawn, but here I am. And it is a wonderful place to be in now. And I understand, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself, is that at the age of, how many of you have brothers and sisters that are 4 and 5, small? That's when I went to school. That's when they came and got me. And think of your siblings. Can you imagine somebody taking them from your home and being away? That's what happened to us. That was a huge blow, not only to ourselves, but to our families. Can you imagine how families felt? The parents, all the children were gone. What were they going to do? What were the grandmothers and the grandfathers going to do in the communities? They didn't have any more grandchildren to teach, pass on the skills and the knowledge that our people had a way of life that was truly, truly good. And it was truly, truly a wonderful community. And that was important. And there they were with no children. And it's like I say, the children of that time were going to be the leaders of tomorrow. Well, finally, here I am at that time, living in the fear and the loneliness and the heartache that it was to be in the residential school, to today. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy that I came through all that so I could tell you about it. And you would know that no matter what your life is like, you always can get through and decide, I'm going to do the best work that I can for my people. Because you know what? That's the most important work you can do, is to build a community and be a good leader in that community. Be a good helper and learn all you can about your life. Learn all you can about your parents and the history of your people. That's so very important. Well, I came back. How many know where the residential school is in Sault Ste. Marie? You do? And what is it? You. What is it called? Oh, I'm sorry. Whose hand was that? I saw a hand in it. Maybe this other fella. Do you know where the residential school was in Sault Ste. Marie? Does anybody know? Yes.
Algoma University.
That's right, Algoma University. And what a good place Algoma University is today. It's totally changed, and I'm so glad that I graduated from Algoma University. As a matter of fact, with your teacher over there, Stan, we went to school together in Algoma University. Of course, I was much older. He was just a little kid. We went to art school. We wanted to pursue our love of art because art is a way of telling stories. Art is a way of telling your history. Art is a way of showing what you want to do and what you want the future to be like. So you have a hand in art is so beautiful. It's the goal of all storytellers to become an artist in some way. So I went there and I graduated along with Stan. And a few years later, I got a call from the president of the Algoma University, and he invited me to be chancellor of the university. How many of you know what a chancellor is? Anybody? The boss. Yes, I am right at the tip of the university, more or less representing what the university is all about. So although I don't take that role seriously, I do help a lot in what's going on within the university and preparing a place for you students to come to get your more knowledge. We're bringing in more programs that will feature the history of Aboriginal people, the history of this country, how to work in your communities to become teachers, to become counselors, to work in your economic development department so that you can bring resources and wealth to your communities. So this is all what Algoma University is about teaching now as well. So if you in the future you want to go to a university, consider Algoma University and come and see me. Tell me you want to go there. I'll make sure you get in. So anyway, that's enough about me. I live in Sault Ste. Marie temporarily, but I live in Missinabie, Ontario. Excuse me, I have to have a drink. Okay, I think I'm ready now. I think I told you some of the stuff that you should know about who's speaking to you. And who's going to speak first? You? What's your name?
Simon,
Hi, Simon.
can you tell us what your life was like before you went to St. John's Residential School?
I will. St. John's Residential School is no longer there. And it was in Chapleau, which is, I don't know if any of you have heard of Chapleau. You know where Chapleau is? Anyway, it's on the highway going towards Timmins. So that's where Chapleau is. And it was a stone structure, and it was very, very big, because when I went there, I wasn't even quite 5 years old. And I went there, and this is how I got there. My family paddled us in a canoe to take us to residential school because we had to go. It was the law then. And if the family resisted the law and didn't send their children to residential school, they were taken away. Some of them were put in jail, and they were their food source was threatened because at that time, the Department of Indian Affairs, there was an Indian agents in the communities. You couldn't leave your community, like just jump on the bus or drive a car and get out of your communities. At that time, you had to ask permission. And that's the only way you could leave your communities. You were almost like in a prison camp, I guess that was, where you had to ask when you had to be back a certain time. So it was pretty stressful at that time. I was very young when I went to St. John's, and I stayed in St. John's for 5 years. So in my growing up years, my very informative years, when you learn about life, when you learn about who you are and so on, that's where I learned from. So of course, I learned all about to be a little soldier, because I had to live by rules, not like at home, different kind of rules. Does that answer your question? Thanks.
How far away was St. John's Residential School from your family's home?
It probably, of course, when I was a little kid, it seemed much longer. But as the canoe paddlers go, I think it probably was about 1.5 miles, something like that. But we were living on the river. We were downriver, so that's where my family was at that time. Yeah.
How often did you go home during the 2 years of residential school, and did you go to St. John's Residential School?
Went home. Thank goodness. I was one of the lucky ones because I was able to go home. There were many children in that school who were not. Either their parents weren't there or their parents didn't have any money to bring them home. And so they had to stay all summer. It was usually during the summer holidays that we got to looking forward to going home. And my father used to work. He had to leave the reserve, and he went to work for the railroad company. And he used to get a free pass on the railroad. But that was on the second school. The first school, my parents and my grandparents came up in the canoe again, came and got us. We had all our belongings. They used to put them in a sack, and away we went. We'd get in the canoes and they'd drive back. And we'd stay the whole summer and come back for school in September. And that's how I got to and from school.
What was a typical day like at St. John's Residential School?
Oh, that was fun. No, no, we got up about 6 o'clock in the morning. Big bell would ring and we'd wake up, get dressed, make our beds, and go downstairs to the playroom. We had a big playroom downstairs, line up and get ready for breakfast, which was about 7 o'clock, 7:15, something like that. So we'd all march in, all the kids would march in the dining room, sit down along these great big long tables, and we'd have our breakfast. Then after breakfast, you had to do chores. Even when you were a very young child, you had to do chores. Like when I was 6, I was already washing dishes and scrubbing floors and doing all that kind of stuff because we had to look after ourselves in that way. There were no people, no adults hired to look after us except for our supervisors. But that's all the supervisor did, made sure where we were doing our work. Yeah, so it was an interesting day. And then we went into the classroom. The classrooms were right in the school. We didn't leave the building to go to school. Classrooms were right in there. So we did our school learning and so on. And once you got to be about the age of 10 or 12, you only could go to school half a day. The rest of the half a day, you had to go and do chores. Like you had to go if you were a girl, you ended up going in the laundry room, doing all the laundry for the whole school. Or if you had to go in the kitchen and help with the peeling potatoes and cooking and stuff like that. And then you had to go into the dining room and set up the tables and make sure that everybody had a place at the table. And then if you were a boy, you had to go to the farm. We had big farms at both schools. You had to take care of chickens, cows, pigs, collect eggs, go milk the cows, go in the garden, plant the garden, and do all those chores, just like a regular adult. All the kids were on the land planting, and the girls were, can you imagine hanging all those sheets out on the laundry? We didn't have a dryer then. You had to hang them outside in freezing winter with clothespins. So that was what we did. So we only got to go to school half a day when we got older. And then after 4 o'clock, that's the time we were allowed to play a little bit. But you couldn't mix with your brothers and sisters. You girls had to stay on one side and the boys had to stay on another. So you didn't get to see your family. very much. And then you were the younger girls and the older girls and the older one, and you didn't mix up either. So they were pretty, what you call, segregated, and had to stay in our own groups. So at that time we got to play and then do the whole thing over for lunch and for supper, to get our meals. After the meals you had a little bit more free time, maybe about an hour, and then you had to get ready for bed and go to bed, and that was day after day after day. Sunday was different. You had to go to church on Sunday morning, and you had to go to church in the Sunday school in the afternoon, and then you had to go to church in the evening. So it was a real holy day there. Everybody was in church mostly all the day. Your question?
Why did you go to Chinlock Residential School when you were 7?
Because, and I explained that just a little bit earlier, it was the law. We had to go. And so in some areas, especially in the north, it was really tragic for them and their families, because those, they call fly-in communities, they're way up north, and they're mostly Anishinaabe people living there. And the planes, the government planes used to come in and land and come to the docks, and you know how it is when you're a little kid. You want to see what's going on. Planes coming in. They run down to the dock, and they took the children at that time, and they put them in the planes. They never told their parents they were gone. They just put them in the planes and took off, bring them to a school. So that was, to me, that's a crime, but they didn't view it as a crime. And that was the government at that time.
How often did you go home from Chinlock Residential School?
Well, when I was at Chinlock, I went home every year for 2 months, for the month of July and August. We left at the end of June, July and August. And it was the most wonderful time for me, because I got to be back on the land. I got to be able to play with my brothers and my sisters, and we got to stay up as late as we wanted to, and we got to play in the woods and go swimming and do all the things that kids like to do. And that was the most wonderful time of the year for us.
What was a typical day like at Chinlock Residential School?
Pardon?
What was a typical day like at Chinlock Residential School?
It was just like the one I described just earlier.
Did children pass away while they were at Chinlock Residential School?
Yes, they did, and at St. John's. It was a very sad and confusing time for us to hear about it. And I say that because when anything like that happened, it was very quiet. It was very hush-hush, and they didn't tell you everything. Sometimes they made up excuses. Sometimes they'd say, well, he was sick and they had to take him away in the ambulance, or she was sick and they had to take her away in the ambulance, and they never told you what happened. And it was only years after that some of us discovered that some of our friends had passed away, and they weren't sent to reform school, because reform school was even worse than residential school. And that's how they used to threaten us, to keep us in line. They'd say, we're going to send you to the reform school, and there you really got treated like a regular prisoner. And it was really, well, I believe so anyway, because those were the horror stories we heard.
What happened to the children who tried to run away from Chinlock Residential School?
Oh, that's really a good question, because I was one of those children that ran away. I was 11, and a couple of my friends, we decided we wanted to go home. We're going to run away. We're going to jump on a train. We didn't know to where, because we didn't know where, really geographically, where we were. But it was just the will that sends you forward. And then we didn't even have the teaching from TV or anything like that, or books talking about what to do if you ran away. We just sort of wing it. And you go away for as long as you can until you get caught. They immediately sent the RCMP after you because you were a federal ward, and the RCMP were dispatched to try and find you. Well, it wasn't too hard to find us because we got hungry and scared at night and so on. So it was almost like we gave up ourselves and let them pick us up and bring us back to the school. So my punishment was that I would, my friends and I, we got all our hair cut off. They cut it all off so in front of everybody so that they could make an example of you. We weren't allowed to wear our clothes. We had to wear our night clothes so we would think about running away again. We got extra punishment in doing things that we generally didn't like to do, like mending socks or blue jeans or cleaning, scrubbing floors, and extra. So that was how we were looked at.
What happened when children passed away while they were at Chinlock Residential School?
It's like I said, it was very hush-hush. People didn't want to talk about it, especially the supervisors. And the kids were told stories like they were taken away, they got sick in the night, they were taken away, and so on. And some of my a friend of mine's brother passed away, and it was very, very sad, and it really impacted her later in life. It was so long that she could even talk about what happened. So officially, I don't know. But some of them are buried in the back where Algoma University is. There's nothing marking their graves, but there's a monument there to them. So, but we know they're back there. And so it was very sad. They were never sent home. They weren't taken back to their communities. And the strange thing about Canada and the residential schools, there was always a cemetery right next to the school. So you know that was going on a lot. There was a lot of children that never ever went back to their homes. Okay?
While you were at Chinlock, how often did you see your brothers and sisters?
I could see them all the time, especially when we were having meals, but I could just look at them. We weren't allowed to interact and as a family. So I never fought with my brothers and sisters. You know, like happens today, kids have civil rivalry. We didn't have that. We were just wishing we could be with our brothers and our sisters.
Did you lose any of your culture or language because of residential schools?
Oh, absolutely, all of it. The little that I do know or did know was only in my real young years, so I didn't know a real lot. But what I did know, I never did retain it. So English became my first language. Doing ways of the white people was what I was trained to do, and so I started thinking that way. Yeah, I was very assimilated. Absolutely.
Can you tell us the story of the boy who was put in the chicken coop?
That boy happened to be my brother, and I didn't know that question was going to be in there. I don't know how it came up, and it's really strange because it was my brother. He was too young at the time that he went to St. John's in Chapleau with me to go to school because he was too young for kindergarten. Or they didn't have kindergarten them days. They had grade 1. They started with grade 1. So they had to do something with him. There was no babysitters, nothing. So they put him in the chicken coop so he wouldn't run away, or they knew where he was all the time. And it wasn't until way after that I found out about this, and I said, oh, that's terrible, because you know how dirty chickens are. And he's just a little kid, about 3 years old, in the chicken coop. Oh wow, that was really bad. Yeah, that was my brother.
The reform school you mentioned earlier, can you tell us more about it?
Well, the reform school was the place that they sent you from residential school. Anyone who was a troublemaker, who didn't get along in the system, were immediately taken and warned about being put in reform school. Of course, when you're a rebellious child and somebody tries to attack you and tell you what to do, you become more rebellious and more rebellious. So of course, once they started down that road, it was just a matter of time that they were taken to reform school. And reform school is like probably what juvie is now. I don't know if any of you know what juvie is, like where they take young people who have behavioral problems and put them in there. But at that time it was really, really tough, and they really punished you hard. There was daily strappings, and they put them by themselves in isolation, and they didn't feed them very well. Well, we never really did eat well anyway, but even worse than that, sometimes they got fed bread and water, and that was it. So it was a tough place for a kid to be. Who's next? Do you have a question? Oh, he needs that.
What made you decide to pursue a degree at Algoma University?
Oh, that's a really good question, because when I came back to Sault Ste. Marie and went back to Algoma University just to look around, we were invited back by one of the professors, Don Jackson, at Algoma University. He was doing a class in CESD, which is Community Economical and Social Development. And one of his students said, we should invite the former students of Shing School to come back, and to come back into the school, to bring them together and see what would happen. So that's what they did. They brought the kids back together. And so when we got together, it's kind of a long story. When we got together, we decided we were going to form a group called the Children of Shing Students Alumni, which described who we were. We were children of that school. And as part of that inspired dream of Chief Shing, it was to place a teaching wigwam. And so that's how Shing became born, or created rather. And that's the part that we wanted to hang on to. It is a very special place with a very special history of people's visions and people's ambitions to create a place for Aboriginal students to come and learn the skills of what it would be like to live in a world with white people, and to be able to interact, to be able to do the jobs, to be able to work in the restaurants, to be able to work in the stores and in the garages and all of industry. And that was part of the dream, and that was the part of the dream that I held on to. And we reignited that dream in 1981, when we came together that first time after leaving the residential school, coming together, and it was like seeing old family, because all those kids that were there, we were all adults by that time, we had grown up together. We were all school chums. So we got talking together and talking about our lives after Shingwalk and so on. And we shared a lot of stories and started the vision, the real vision of Chief Shingwalk, to move into helping Algoma University become a place of learning for Aboriginal students in this day and this era. Who's next? You? Who's next? Who was the last question? Oh.
The tribes of Lake Huron and Lake Superior negotiated their treaties with Canada. When did the Treaty for Missinaibi Cree happen?
The treaty, this is real foggy. I'll tell you, look at it like looking through fog. The treaty people were traveling up the northern part of Ontario, and they were negotiating the new treaty, which was called Treaty Number 9. And at that time, our original people of Moose Factory were traveling down the canoe routes because of the fur trade was really, really important at that time. So this big river ran right down to where Missinaibi is now where I live. And they used to come down there, and when the treaties were being signed up in the north, they were gone. My people were gone because they were on the land and doing their traditional things. And they loved it down there so much they decided to stay there. And it's because they used to plant their gardens down there in the summertime. They'd come up there and they'd plant carrots and potatoes and staples, turnips and things for the winter, so that they could take back up north and have with their fish and their moose meat. So it was a way of survival that they did that. What was the question again? Yeah, why did we come down there? Yes. And what was our treaty? Well, we missed that. We missed the boat at that time. So really, in essence, the government is trying to tell we're part of Treaty 9, we're in Treaty 9, our people are of Treaty 9, but we don't have any signatures on anything. So it's been a long time trying to get that piece of land back, and we still haven't got it. It's in its final stages now. When I went back to my community, I became chief there, and we laid a claim and took it to court and so on. And 25 years later, it's still in the system. So, you on your second question?
What advice would you give to Aboriginal youth today?
Oh yeah, well I told you some of it when I first was talking to you, is to hold your culture dear, because when you start really learning and going in depth into your culture and what it means and what it holds there and what's buried in there, you will be so surprised. It's the way the world should be. It's the way the world should be run, with all of those teaching. We talk about truth and honesty and respect. All of those things, they're not just for Aboriginal people. They're for everybody. And if you're ever going to get along together, putting all the differences aside and just working. So learn about your culture as much as you can. Go to the ceremonies, because the ceremonies will give you strength, will give you the pride in who you are, and will make you stronger. Learn as much as you can about your community. And if you don't have a language, you're not speaking your own language, try to learn your own language, because in the language come all of the teachings, all of who you are, all of your history, your creation story, the stories about your people, your ancestors. They're all there in your language. So even though we try to interpret them in English, they're best said in your own language. And so you need to know that, as I said before, to be good leaders in your community. And you will be the leaders. You will, even though you're just sitting in a chair now and you're sitting in school. Put that in here, because you are. There's no denying. Nobody can take that away from you. You are, and you will be a leader in your communities. And your whole community will depend on you to do your bit, to do your, maybe become a teacher like Stan is. Yeah. Or to become a speaker like I am myself, talking about the whole process. And preparing the world for your children and your grandchildren. I know that seems so far away, but you know what? It comes up real quickly. And before you know it, you'll be doing what you need to do as adults in your community. And I know we'll have healthy communities if you learn about all of those things I told you about. It'll make you stronger and smarter and more of a respectful human being. Okay, who did I leave off with? Oh.
What are the goals for Missinaba Cree today?
Oh, the goals for Missinaba Cree? Oh my goodness, yes, there are many. And like I say, when I was chief, I signed the land claim and started from there. So all these years I've been working in some capacity to help my First Nation to, first of all, we had to gather all our people together, find out where they were, because they were spread across the country. So that was my first job. And then we had to start right from the very beginning, bringing us together, having ceremony, learning about what those ceremonies were, because many of us didn't know them. So that's what we did. We learned about the ceremonies, and we kept coming together. We tried to build a place for our people to come. When I was chief, I went and bought a tourist lodge up in Missinaba, and our people used to come there every summer. So that was the way, providing them a way to come and sit with each other, talk with each other, learn about each other's family again, and connect that way. And I thought that was, in the beginning, that was the most important thing to do, was to work on that element of bringing family together, and the spiritual element that would be the glue that holds everybody together. And we're still working towards that very hard. Okay.
Could you tell us about your artwork?
Oh, my artwork. I sure can. I always wanted to be an artist. When I was a child, I was always drawing and always painting and doing art. And being in residential school as well, one of the most wonderful gifts that we got one gift at Christmas time, was a coloring book and a set of crayons, 8 crayons in a box. Those were precious to me, and it allowed me and got me interested in art. And so I'd color my book and draw, always drawing, always trying to create something. And through the years, I had to put some of that aside. Every once in a while, I'd break out and do a piece and put it in some exhibition and so on. But I had to put that aside for quite a while, and I thought, well, I got to go back to university. I want to get a degree in art so that I know what I'm doing when I'm doing it, and what it's going to look like, and so on. I wanted to learn the basics and the fundamentals of art. If you're going to go on in any subject, you have to learn all your basics and your fundamentals so that you're creating your piece from a solid foundation. So I wanted to do that, and mostly because of our history. Because I knew so little of it, I would very often fantasize about what that would be, and draw pictures and so on in that way. And the last pieces I did were from driftwood, and I love working with driftwood. It's a natural product, and I'd see shapes and forms, and then I'd work on them, and I did that for my degree in Algoma University, and I do a number of things, paintings and drawings and things like that, but I haven't done anything on a huge scale or scope. I'll wait until I get old to do that.
Did the children build the chapel at Chinlock?
Pardon?
Did the children build the chapel at Chinlock?
Yes. That's really neat that you asked that question, because people, remember I told you earlier that we all had to work hard when the time that we were little, and the boys were the ones that had to build a chapel. They had to get the stones, they had to, they were under supervision of a carpenter. They made the benches that are in. Have any of you been on a tour of that place? Oh, that'd be a good thing for maybe this school to do, to go and learn about and see it firsthand, especially in the chapel. Yes, the kids had to work real hard to do that, to do the work they did. Whose turn?
What is a chancellor, and when did you become one?
Oh, in 2015, and the chancellor is the head of the university, but not. It's like a crown on a queen's head or something like that. I don't have any real power with it, but I do have, in a way, that I'm constantly working with the people throughout the university, and I make recommendations, especially when they want to move towards anything to do with the Aboriginal students coming in to the university, to prepare and help them along the way. So they usually take my advice. As a matter of fact, tomorrow I've organized the first real circle within the university tomorrow, and I'll be doing that. And it came through a lot of turmoil that was happening at Algoma University earlier this year. And so I said, let me try and do this. Let me try to bring you together in a good way. So tomorrow will be the first circle at Algoma University, which is good. And that's the way that I work as a chancellor. I speak with the president, I speak with the professors, I speak with the students that are there. And so it's always an ongoing relationship building position. That's what it is to me. Who's next?
Why were you sent so far away from home for school?
The reason being, the agenda of the government was to remove the children as far away from their homes as possible. The big agenda of the government of Canada was to take the people off the land so that they could have the resources that are on the land. And you're going to learn about this more history as we go forward. And true history, what's being taught now to a large degree, is not the true history of what happened in this country. So myself, Stan, other teachers, other Aboriginal leaders are going to make sure that that true history is being taught in our schools, so everybody can have a true understanding of what took place and what we have to do in the future to build a stronger country, especially for Aboriginal people. So that's why they set them so far away, so it wasn't easy. They didn't want the parents to come and visit because it was too costly. They couldn't pay for the railway fare or the airfare, or many of them didn't have cars, and so they wanted to separate the families so they would have no connection to the old way of life, the good way of life, where the community worked together, lived together, families were together and harmonious. They wanted to break that up because they wanted the country. And so this is what's going to be your job in the future. You are the ones that are going to have to bring that Aboriginal people back into their rightful place in this land. Okay, who did I leave off with?
Why is the Missinabee Cree office in Sault Ste. Marie?
Because our land claim is not finished as yet. We were promised it 10 years in a row that the paperwork would be done by the federal government and it would be forthcoming at our annual gathering. We have an annual gathering every August, and every gathering for the past 10 years they promised us that we would have our land. So far, hasn't happened. So far, we have another promise for this year. So we're still waiting.
Can you tell us about the traditional life of the Cree where you're from?
The traditional life of my grandparents was very much one that was on the land. They trapped for a living. They made all of their own tools that they needed. They made their own canoes. And they knew and understood the seasons of the year. There were certain times when they could go trapping, certain times when they could fish a lot, certain times when they could go gathering the berries and everything that they needed to live their lives in the comfort that they knew and they wanted. So traditionally that's what they did, and visited with each other. I can remember just faint glimpses of what the old people used to sit in the kitchen and drink tea. And they had those old tin cups, and they would clangety clang, 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 and put sugar in there and talk and laugh and tell stories. It was like a dream coming through. And I was only a very, very small girl. And that's what I remember. That's what I think about. That brought me. I was all warm inside, and then I could fall asleep. It was a beautiful time. Who's got the... Oh, whose turn? Everybody finished?
Is there anything you would like to tell us that we haven't asked you about?
You guys had a lot of good questions. Do you have any questions that's not on the page, first of all, on the things? Anybody? Do you think that you got a lot of knowledge out of this? Good. Yes?
What was the worst punishment you got at your residential school?
Oh, getting strapped. Getting strapped was... And it wasn't a belt. It was a strap made for strapping. It was specifically for strapping. And it was very heavy, and it had little metal threads in there to make it heavy and hurt. And it hurt. Yes?
What was the best food you ate there?
The best food I ate was oranges. We got 1 orange a week, and that was on Sunday. And that was all the fruit that we ever got. And so what some of us used to do, we used to trade. We used to use it as a trading item. So if we wanted something that one of the other kids had, we'd say, oh, if it was really good, I'll give you my orange for 3 weeks, 3 Sundays, if I can have that. And so we'd make trade, barter. That's what we had. Yes?
Did the boys, after they only had half days at school, did they go out and did they learn how to hunt?
No, the half day that they weren't in school, they didn't learn all those things. They were not allowed to do that. They had to go into the garden and plant, look after the farm animals, doing any building that needed to be done. So there was they didn't have hunting. They weren't allowed to do that. Anyway, yeah. Yes?
How much brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 10. They used to have big families in those days. There was a lot of work to be done, so they had to have a lot of arms and strength to get that work done. Surviving on the land is not easy. It's not like just going camping. You have to hunt. You have to have people who know how to hunt, provide your food. You had to build your shelters, meaning usually you have to do it by hand. We didn't have any chainsaws or power saws or anything like that. They had to make their own transportation. I remember my grandfather and my dad making canoes, most beautiful canoes I ever saw, and we were in them all the time. So surviving on the land is very, very hard work. The women, the grandmothers used to go out and pick medicine, pick the berries, make certain things so that preserve that stuff so that they could have it to eat in the winter. They bought very few things from the store. They bought flour, baking powder, lard or shortening, beans, all of those staples that you fill up your cupboards with in the fall so it lasts you all winter. Yes?
When you first got to residential school, how did you learn language? How fast did it take you to learn it?
I was really young, so it didn't take me a long time. And I really didn't know the Cree language. I just remember hearing it. But, nobody talks to you when you're a little wee kid like that, have a conversation with you. So life was different, yeah, no.
If you speak in your own language, what would they do?
If you're in the school, many kids got punished really badly because, and I don't know what the thinking was of the people who were in charge. How can you bring a child from a home who speaks a different language, put them in another setting, and expect them to know how to speak that language? It's impossible. So but they learned fast because every time they didn't know, they were beaten for it. And beaten, I mean really beaten, especially if they were boys. So it was really hard, really hard. So consequently, a lot of the kids didn't say anything. They never said anything. They couldn't answer in school because they wouldn't, otherwise they'd get beaten. It was a really hard struggle for a lot of them who came, especially the ones who came from way up north and whose whole community spoke the language. Yes?
Do you remember your first thoughts that you had when you arrived at the residential school?
My first what?
Your first thoughts do you remember?
Oh yes, because the building was huge. Coming from the bush and being so small, and going up those stairs at Algoma University, you're thinking, where is this place? What am I in? I didn't even have the concept of castle yet or whatever. It was just so strange and unreal. There was a lot of fear, but because my sisters and my brothers came in with me, I wasn't too bad. But then they started separating us. And then we had like fear and loneliness. That was very, very, very hard for us. The only reason we were allowed to go home was if our parents could pay our way. And if you had parents that didn't have any money, you weren't allowed to go. You had to stay there. And I really felt sorry for them. Even though every time I went home for the summer, when I when it came time, I used to walk in the woods and around our place, and then I'd look and I'd see a leaf turning color. And I wouldn't try not to see that. I didn't see that because I knew in the fall I had to go back, I had to come back. So that was really hard when you're a little kid. But I got through it all, and I'm here today, I'm so happy to say, to help you and to hopefully to pass on some ideas to you. Because what I said was true. Miigwech.
On behalf of ESU, again, I'd like to give this to you.
Oh, thank you very
miigwech.
much. Miigwech. Miigwech for listening. Thank you. You guys are awesome.